Hello, wonderful leaders. It's our last chapter of our leadership boot camp. And in this chapter, the next 3 lessons are going to be how to integrate mind, body, and soul in order to do really hard, really awesome things. We're going to learn about having hard conversations. We're going to learn about integrating, and all of that is going to come together in these last 3 lessons. First, let me talk about today's lesson. We're going to learn today about how to have those really hard conversations, the feedback conversation, the this isn't working for me kind of conversation. They come up all the time when you're working in teams, and honestly, with all of the people that we love as well. And so I'm going to lead you through a couple different things that are important for that. And I'm going to show you how mind, body, and soul all come together around this. We started with soul. How do you stay true to your values, to your purpose? And it's also about how do you hold your boundaries? I know we covered that earlier on, but in the soul portion, that's really what it's about. It's about holding true to what's most important to you, your values, your purpose. Another portion that we're going to integrate in is some of the things we talked about in the mind chapter. That is overcoming cognitive bias. So we talked about several different cognitive biases. Negativity bias, that is how it is that we focus on the bad stuff. Implicit bias, which is the in and the out group. And the fundamental attribution error, where we judge others for their character rather than judging ourselves for the situation. So we'll talk about how cognitive biases play into hard conversations. We're also going to talk about other parts of the mind, the lesson that we learn on how do you manage risk and uncertainty. How do you get to the story beneath the story in those really difficult conversations? Those are things like embracing the discomfort of not knowing. Do you remember the serenity prayer? Controlling what you can and letting go of the rest. Resisting that quick conclusion and not going command and control, doing things in partnership where you can. And then finally, we're going to talk about body, especially the part about emotional intelligence. That's the being self-aware of what you're feeling, being able to manage what you're feeling by shifting what your emotional state is by what story you're telling in your mind and the way that your body is responding to that. And then we're going to talk about other awareness, what the other person is feeling. When you can do that all together, then you can manage the other. And that's this tool here. That is, how do you have hard conversations? So, to that end, how do you have hard conversations? We're going to break that up into 2 parts. Part number 1 is, what do you do when it's 2 people that you manage, a group that you facilitate, your 2 kiddos, whatever it is, 2 people other than yourselves. How can you facilitate one of those hard conversations and get 2 people that are in conflict past that conflict? The way we're going to talk about it is through restorative practices. Restorative practices is one of the most well-researched conflict resolution strategies. Its aim is to develop community and manage conflict and tension by repairing the harm between people and building the relationship stronger. And that practice has been used in all sorts of situations. Everything from law enforcement to negotiations to schools. It is used in all sorts of different contexts, and it has been shown to be incredibly impactful and effective. Also, it's very simple if you can get into it. So I wanted to give you some of the context of how do you have and build that restorative practice so that you can facilitate a conversation for 2 people and make that a better conversation. The key idea behind restorative practices is that there's ways to be true to oneself. So remember, being the soul, staying true to your purpose, values, and boundaries, at the same time being true to the other person's. And for instance, you can think of it as a T-chart, a quadrant, where you have how high or low are you true to yourself, and how high or low are you true to the other person. If you have, say, high being true to yourself, but you're not really true to the other person, you're doing things to them. You're controlling them. You're punishing them. You are doing things to the other person. The other contrast is, what if you're really high on helping and allowing the other person's values and purpose to stand strong, but you're really low on your own? That's 4. You're being incredibly permissive, you're being too giving, and you're not standing true to your values. That's also a pretty hard place to be. If you're neither true to yourself nor true to the other, you're ignoring it. So in those kinds of conflict situations, that's the la 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 la, I'm not listening, I'm ignoring the problem, and that's where the problems get worse and worse and worse and worse. Instead, restorative practices is about being true to both parties. It's being true to yourself and being true to the other. It's acknowledging the needs and the most important things of both parties. And that's where you can do things together. It's doing things with one another. That's the restorative mindset. So in this restorative model, how can you partner with people and stay true to both people's values and purpose? How can you acknowledge what both people are feeling? How can you acknowledge both people's biases and both people's ability to manage risk, and stay in to get behind the story, to get underneath the story on the surface to the story below? And that requires resisting that quick conclusion and not going command and control, because you're doing it in partnership. So the tool itself, when you are in that facilitated context, whether it's 2 people that you're facilitating a negotiation or a resolution with, or it's a large group that has come into conflict, or 2 groups that have come into conflict, there's one single kind of format, a flow of conversation that is possible to negotiate and facilitate through. And the acronym for that is WARM, W-A-R-M. The W stands for what happened. The A stands for affect. What is the emotion? The R stands for restore. And M is for making a plan. And I'll walk through each one of those steps one by one. The way that the conversation goes is you ask both parties what happened. From their point of view, what happened in the situation? And again, in this situation, you want to get to the story below the story. You want to resist that quick conclusion. You want to apply multiple different lenses to really understand what's going on from each person's point of view. And what you'll often find is that there is no resolution. It doesn't have to look the same from the 2 different people's point of view, because it's not the same. The experience that people have, because of the way that they perceive it, can be very, very different. The job of the what happened isn't to get to agreement on a common story. It's about hearing both perspectives and putting them both on the table and valuing both with the same care, with the same integrity. And in this part, it's really important to be mindful of those cognitive biases, the in-group and the out-group, and especially that negativity bias and the focusing on all of the bad stuff. Draw out what happened. Use all of your good coaching skills, use all of your empathy, and just draw out what happened. The next part, the A, the affect, that's the part where it's all about emotional intelligence. It's really helping each party be completely aware of what were they feeling. What are they feeling then? What are they feeling now? Naming those emotions and becoming aware of those emotions and helping them manage their emotions in the moment. If things get tense, helping them manage that by asking them, let's take a moment to calm down and breathe. Let's even take a break if we need to. That you're using the affect of the room to really draw out and be conscientious of the emotions that have been brought to bear, and having the different individuals name the emotions that they're feeling. The other part is in that concluding this affect portion, it's really helpful to say, so what's been the worst part of this for you? Having them name that for themselves and then hearing the other parties can be a really important part of the conversation, because you often circle around to lots and lots of different what happened things and emotion things, and then you kind of sum that up and you kind of bring it all to an end with asking each party, so what's been the worst part of this for you, or what's been the hardest part of this for you? And then once you get that on the table, then it's time to restore. The restoration portion is asking everybody that's present to really explore what ways can we repair the harm? How can we say sorry for the parts that are our responsibility? And then offer ways and start to make a plan for how to prevent problems in the future. The restoration portion is often having the person who did the most harm to the other start first by saying, so what is it that you want to take responsibility for? What is it that is important to you? And then asking the other party, what is it that you need from this other person to make things right, to restore the relationship and build the relationship better? So it's all, as I said, about repairing harm and building relationship. That restoration piece is exploring what is it that is necessary to repair the harm and what is necessary to build that relationship back up again. In that part, I often include what kinds of ways to say sorry, because a lot of people are not practiced at saying sorry. They say sorry in all of the wrong ways. A true apology in a restorative practices format is saying, I am sorry for, and naming the thing that they are actually sorry for. It was wrong because, and naming the reason why that was the wrong choice to make, and then asking, what can I do to make it better? That kind of an apology can go a huge long way to repairing the harm. And then the other person can offer those things that will help restore the harm. So that's the restoration piece. And then finally, making a plan. How can the whole group work together to make a plan so that it doesn't happen again? WARM. What happened? Affect, restore, make a plan. The restorative practice format, that's the script to use whether you're talking about two different individuals, and they can be kids squabbling, or two employees that are squabbling. It could be a boss and their supervisee and some conflict between them. This restorative process works in so many different situations and is so helpful to fixing problems between people. But what if you're the person? What if it's involving you and you can't facilitate that? Instead, what happens when somebody needs to restore something that is done to you, or that you need to restore something that you've done to another? I want to draw this conversation out of Susan Scott's Fierce Conversations book. She named an amazing script and listed 7 different pieces that would go into the framing of a conversation that you want to have with somebody to do that restorative process. What she recommends is taking and naming each of these 7 things in one go in 60 seconds or less, and using that to start off the conversation. The 7 parts of that fierce conversation are, first of all, naming the issue. Secondly, giving a specific example. Third, describing the emotions that have been generated. 4, clarifying what's at stake here. 5, naming your contribution to the problem. 6, stating a wish to resolve the problem. And finally, 7, an invitation to participate and contribute towards making things right. So this can be done, and this is often done in a serious feedback type of situation. Something was wrong, something was done either to you or to others in the organization. How can you bring that feedback to somebody in a way that doesn't feel like an attack, but rather feels like I'm inviting you to a partnership, I'm inviting you to a restorative practice to make things right? So let's go through an example. Let's imagine that I am an employee and my boss has been saying some things that have been really hurtful. It's one of those things where it's hard because there's a power dynamic. My boss may not even realize that the things that are being said are really hurtful. So let's walk through how can you have one of these fierce Susan Scott style conversations about it. First of all, you want to name the issue. Hey, John, I wanted to let you know that the way that you speak to me when you are a little bit frustrated or disappointed comes through and it really hurts my feelings. So you name the specific issue and name that it comes from when he's feeling frustrated or disappointed. Let's give a couple specific examples. That's part 2. Specifically, this happened most recently when we were walking back from the project and you said, by the way, that wasn't done very well. And I'm kind of disappointed by how that turned out. And he said that in a way that was kind of mean and kind of dismissive. And that was hard. Describing the emotions that made me feel ashamed. It made me feel like all of the good work that I did wasn't recognized. And it made me feel really hurt because of that. So you want to name and describe the specific emotions, hurt, shame, and allow the person to see what that is and what that means. Then you clarify what's at stake. What's at stake here is our working relationship. It makes me hesitant to try because I'm not being recognized for the good things that I do. That all that I hear from you is the negative and not the positive. And that is really hard for me to continue to put forth my best effort at this company. Part 5, what's your contribution? My contribution to this issue has been that I haven't spoken up earlier. I haven't spoken up and to let you know that what I need is a lot of positive encouragement and that that's what's going to motivate me to do better. If you notice my strengths and use those strengths to help me improve in certain areas, that's what's going to cause me to rise and continue to do my very, very best. So name your contribution that I haven't spoken up earlier. State your wish to resolve this. I want to resolve this with you. I want to continue doing this good work because I really believe in it. And then you invite your partner to respond. So, naming the issue, a specific example, describing the emotions, clarifying what's at stake, naming your contribution, stating your wish to resolve, and inviting your partner to be part of the solution. Those are the steps of the Fierce Conversations, and you'll have all of those steps laid out as well as a link to the book so that you can get more information. The way that Susan Scott goes through all of that information and lays it out and gives you a very clear example and works it through is fantastic. So well worth it. The discussion question for the week is for you to name a hard conversation that you've had in the past or that you need to have in the future. And of course, the challenge, the experiment for this week is to try it. Try to have one of those hard conversations. Either go through the warm steps of a restorative conversation with 2 people or with a team, or be brave and have that really hard conversation with somebody. That is all for now. Thank you so much, you wonderful, wonderful leaders, for being here with me. More soon next week.